It is my pleasure now to introduce David Payne, Associate Vice President of Higher Education at ETS. David will say a few words about our efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be here today, and listening to the description of the Transparency by Design initiative really does bring home the point that this initiative really works hand in glove with the approach that Educational Testing Service has been advocating in terms of how to approach assessing student learning outcomes. ETS is a provider of reliable and valid assessments that are used to improve quality and equity in education around the world. And as part of our not-for-profit mission, one of the things that we have been committed to doing is working with the educational community to try to provide frameworks, policy reports, and other types of information that can allow the higher ed community to really address issues that are of concern to the community. The current focus on assessing student learning outcomes is completely consistent with an approach that ETS has been advocating through a series of reports titled Culture of Evidence. The steps that were just articulated in terms of the approach that's been taken through the Transparency by Design initiative, that is specifically identifying the questions that each institution wants to provide information regarding, finding appropriate assessments, and I use the plural there intentionally, assessments for how to assess these skill areas or knowledge areas, then collecting that information, and then importantly, using that information to address important institutional goals and problems, to identify strength areas, and also to address areas where the strength is not at the level that the institution would like it to be. All of these approaches are completely consistent with what ETS has been advocating for quite some time now. We're simply thrilled to be involved with this initiative. The last point I'd like to make is that in looking at this initiative, it strikes us that it's very likely that this initiative is going to serve as a catalyst for other similar initiatives that are underway across the country from coast to coast and border to border. There are a number of other initiatives that have started moving this direction, and I think the Transparency by Design initiative has taken a huge step forward in embracing this, in making this information available to students, prospective students, and other shareholders in the higher education community. So ETS as an organization looks forward to working with the Transparency by Design initiative and their member institutions. We congratulate them on the work that's been done to date, and we expect that going forward we're going to see a lot more progress on addressing this important national concern.
Thank you very much, David. Arthur, let me start off by apologizing for not having included you in my earlier introductions, and thank you, Mike, for the recovery. But ladies and gentlemen, I'd now like to turn the platform over to Arthur Rumpkoff, who is the Senior Vice President at the Chamber for Workforce Development and Education. Arthur?
Great. Thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me here this morning. I have to say that as someone who served on Secretary Spelling's Commission on the Future of Higher Education, I am very impressed because this effort, Transparency by Design, is precisely what the Commission was trying to accomplish. If you go back to the Commission report, and I have to say it's the most controversial part of the report because it talks about assessment, accountability, transparency, give students, prospective students, in some cases of the younger students, their parents, the ability to know, one, what's being taught, what the outcome is expected to be, and what the outcome is. And I'd have to say this is, in my mind, the first really strong effort that is directed at accomplishing that. And I would second David's comments. We hope that it will, I would hope personally, and I know the Secretary would, and Charles Miller, who is the chairman of the Commission, would hope that this would have an effect on some of those, let's say, recalcitrant members of higher education who are fighting this initiative. And it's frankly the group that I have come from, which is the nonprofit private sector, which does not, really has not embraced this concept in a very robust way. We think it's critically important, and let me just briefly describe what we're doing at the U.S. Chamber. We have a very robust program on education and workforce. It's driven by the current shortages of skills in the workforce and the impending crisis as baby boomers, 77 million of them, start retiring in the next few years, and the need for trained, skilled, and educated workers. And it's something we focus on. My colleagues Rolf and Terrence are focused primarily on the legislative side. I do that as well. And then we have an Institute for Competitive Workforce which is a not-for-profit that is looking at ways to improve K through 12, as well as worker training and retraining. We think that's a critical need. It's working with older individuals in the workforce, keeping them in the workforce, but retraining them. We've got lots of talent out there in this country, many of whom whose jobs have been lost for one reason or another, and we've got to get them trained and retrained. And what these your institutions represented here are doing are playing a critical role. So, speaking as a member of Secretary Spelling's commission and as someone responsible for the Chamber's role in this area, I commend all of you for what you're doing here. I think it's a great effort, and I would hope and expect that it'll have an impact on other segments of higher education, because I think that's critical for the benefit of the competitiveness of the U.S. economy and for the personal growth and satisfaction of our workforce. So I appreciate being here.
Arthur, thank you very much for those comments. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, we'd like to open the floor up to any questions that you might have, or any member of our panel. Any specific questions you might have about transparency by design and how we see it going forward. Are there questions? Yes, Dan.
Yeah, I'm with Carl for clarification. I guess speak a little bit more. I know you touched on it somewhat, but speak a little more about how you plan on disseminating this information, how people could access it, and how they're going to be able to interpret it.
Okay, Mike, would you like to take that one?
Sure, I'll take that. Thanks. Our thinking right now is that we would post this on each of the institution websites, and then through the President's Forum, we will push information out, sending people who may be interested to look there. Because for us, our prospective learners are going to go to those websites, particularly because we're online. However, we continue to work on this, Dan, and it's possible that we will figure out a way to have, our goal would be to find a third-party aggregator, a not-for-profit that might be interested in aggregating some of the information, so that it's not us simply remixing the data, but that we can put it out there in a different format. That has not yet happened, but over the next, the coming months, we will continue to work on this, refining, as I said earlier, what we're going to do with alumni data, and get it ready so that in the first quarter of 2009, not only can you come to our website, but there may be other ways to access aggregate data.
It's really something that we're in the process of starting to do. One of the other initiatives of the President's Forum is a public education program relative to online learning, and it also will include drawing attention to the transparency by design and the information it provides us. Are there other questions? Anyone is welcome to ask, and if you have a thought, even if you're not from the media. Well, let me say this, that we will all remain here and be available to speak with you one-on-one if you have questions that you would occur to you before you depart. And we thank everyone for coming out and being with us today. This is an initiative that we're really quite proud of. It represents more than, nearly 2 years' worth of work, and it's something which we believe is going to make a real contribution to higher education and to workforce development. Thank you again.